Hi, hello, this is Anup. Today we are going to talk about desktop as a service, DaaS. DaaS has been there in the industry for many years, but nowadays what I can see is a revolution of DaaS and a segregation of DaaS into three offerings. So we will check what are those three offerings and what are the differences between three and what are the advantages, disadvantages of those three. And then we will go through SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunities, threats, kind of segregation for each types of DaaS offering such as self-assembled, vendor managed and vendor assembled. We'll take the examples of different vendors who provide different types of DaaS offering. So stay tuned, don't skip the video, let's go ahead and check this out. So let's understand types of DaaS in this video. What is DaaS first of all? Desktop as a service provided by many vendors. We'll get into more details about this. What is the difference between the traditional VDI and DaaS, etc. Three types of DaaS offering as per the industry standards and as per Gartner. Self-assembled, vendor-assembled, vendor-managed. These are the three offerings mainly available in the industry. We'll discuss about all these in this video. And what is Gardner's view on DaaS market? And what is the strategic planning assumption from Gardner on the DaaS market, which is the offering they are betting more on, etc. We will see all those things in this particular video. First of all, let's understand what is DaaS. Before going into that, let's understand VDI. What is on-prem traditional VDI? So if you look at the diagram over here, this is a Citrix flow diagram where you can see different components. Everything is hosted in on-prem data center. So you should have several servers and a complex architecture. We will have to provision the VDAs on the hypervisor available in on-prem data center to facilitate virtual desktop solution or virtual application solution. Basically, everything is inside the data center. No connection is going out of the data center. Probably the connections going out of data center as through the DMZ zone or through the VPN connection, etc. That is the traditional VDI solution. Now, most of the vendors, I would say all of the vendors, are moving away from entirely traditional on-prem solution to a cloud-based solution. What is the main difference? The main difference is virtual desktop and virtual application offerings are coming directly from public cloud or service providers. What does that mean? We will go into details of this in coming slides, but on the high level, vendors provide a fully managed control plane service as part of DaaS offering. Vendors will be managing the control plane in the DaaS offering, so you don't need to worry about that as a customer. So what are the three offerings available as per the industry standards? This is the first one, self-assembled DaaS. This is the second one, and that is vendor assembled DaaS, and this is the third one, vendor managed DaaS. We will check all these offerings in detail in coming slides. So let's look at self-assembled DaaS. This is the first offering, and this is very close to traditional on-prem VDI solution. You need high-level technical skill to have this infrastructure, self-assembled VDI platform. Over here, if you check the Citrix example, you can see some parts of the solution is managed entirely by Citrix, and that is called Citrix Cloud. Citrix Cloud has many components. One of them is Citrix DaaS and the other one is Citrix Gateway Service. So this is the vendor assembled part where customers need to manage everything inside that box. We'll see more details about this in a bit. Before that, let's check the AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop Solution from Microsoft. Even Azure Virtual Desktop Solution offers self-assembled DaaS solution. That means control plane is in public cloud entirely managed by Microsoft, and even gateway is managed by Microsoft. As you can see over here, this part is managed by Microsoft, and the subscription, this particular box is normally managed by customers. This is Microsoft, this is customer managed. Okay, now let's understand what is self-assembled DaaS. You have seen the examples. Citrix Cloud, AVD, both of these solutions are self-assembled DaaS. As I mentioned, it is very close to traditional on-prem VDI solution. The only difference is that core infra components and hosting are fully managed by vendor. Core infra component is control plane and then gateway, etc. So those things are entirely managed by vendor. In this case, it is Microsoft, and in this scenario, it is Citrix. Hosting is also provided by the vendor. Normally, if it is Microsoft solution, then hosting is provided by Microsoft. What I mean by hosting is server racks, data center, location, etc, etc. All those things are provided by Microsoft. And even in Citrix scenario, there are two options, and even Microsoft scenario, there are two options. For Citrix and Microsoft, there can be some on-prem VDAs and some other components can be installed in on-prem to facilitate some workload hosting in on-prem. In that scenario, hosting is managed by customers itself sometimes. But again, core infra components are entirely managed by vendor, either Microsoft or Citrix or some other vendors like VMware, etc. Other infra components such as server, network, security, storage, configurations are managed by vendor. In a public cloud scenario like this infrastructure is entirely managed by Microsoft. The server racks, storage, disk, etc, etc. But customers will also get option to configure or customize servers, network, security components and storage. Customers will have to create their own VNets in hub and spoke model, normally for all these self-assembled DaaS scenario, and they can configure the storage locations and then server configurations, server templates, etc. they can select. So that is why it is self-assembled DaaS. What is customers' pure responsibility over here? Customers will have to manage and configure these VMs. That is customers' responsibility in self-assembled DaaS solution. And network connectivity, etc, all those things customers will have to manage. So mainly core infra components are provided by the vendors in this scenario. Hosting is also provided by vendors if customers want to use public cloud infrastructure. If they want to use on-prem hypervisor to have some on-prem VDI solution, then that is managed by customers or service providers. Even though vendor provides all these services, server, network, security, storage, customers can configure it, customize it accordingly, and then they have to configure and manage user VMs. Now let's look at strength, opportunities, weaknesses and threats of the self-assembled DaaS solution. Let's look at strength first. You have server and storage flexibility. You can opt in for any types of servers as per your requirements. There are a lot of custom infra configuration options are available with self-assembled DaaS solution. It is a very well matured market solution. Most of the organizations are using it at the moment, and it supports all the traditional VDI scenarios or most used scenarios such as multi-session, pooled VDIs, non-persistent VDIs, etc, etc. So these are the strengths of self-assembled DaaS. Now let's look at the opportunities. It has a lot of granular disaster recovery or business continuity plan options if you go with self-assembled, and there are advanced options for image management also available with self-assembled DaaS solution like AVD, Citrix Cloud, etc. and better custom monitoring options are available with self-assembled one. Now let's look into weaknesses. It is complex to implement and maintain. Even operations part of it is complex. It requires all the traditional VDI skills if you are using self-assembled DaaS solution. Some of the vendors provides hybrid options and multi-cloud scenarios, and that is going to increase the challenges for operational team, and even it is going to increase the architecture and design challenges. Adoption of new features for some of the vendors who are not providing native cloud solution, for them adoption of new features is going to be challenging. These are the weaknesses. Now let's look into threats. As I mentioned in the weakness, this is going to be a complex architecture to maintain in a fast moving modern technology world. Some of the vendors, as I mentioned, not using fully cloud native architecture. If you are using those kind of architecture, then it is going to be very difficult to adopt to new features, etc., etc. So these are the things you need to look into. Now let's look at vendor assembled DaaS solution. I have taken Worksport as an example along with Windows 365 in this scenario. Let's understand what does vendor assembled means. Vendor manages most part of this solution. Server, storage, and infra configurations are fully managed by vendor. Some other components are also managed by vendors. For example, network security, image management, application management, and sometimes user support also are managed by vendor. But customers also will have option. If they want, they can configure, they can customize network security, and they can create custom images, they can deploy applications, etc. It depends on the vendor. So if you take the example of Windows 365, Windows 365 service admin scenario, admin portal is integrated to Intune. So all the configurations are done via Intune portal. I have a video explaining this diagram, what are the architecture components of Windows 365, and I will attach that over here in I button. If you click on I button in YouTube, you would be able to get that. So basically, vendor provides server, storage, infra, most of the stuff. As an admin, as a customer, you just need to provision a VM by creating some of the policies in Intune portal. You don't have to go through the pain of a complex architecture like self-assembled DaaS. In this scenario, you don't need to create an infrastructure in the cloud. For this, you just need to use the solution which is already in place. You just need to select a template of VM as per your license in Windows 365 scenario, and then just need to go through the provisioning policy wizard or create a provisioning policy for the first time, and then you just need to add a associated license to a user. Then automatically the personal desktop will get assigned to that particular user, and then using Intune you would be able to install applications, security policies, etc., etc. with that orchestration. So the advantage of Windows 365 is you can use similar policies, applications from Intune itself. You don't have to have a different management tool for VDIs and physical devices. You can have one single management tool for VDIs and physical devices, and other vendors also can do the same thing. So all these infra components like hypervisor layer in the cloud, etc., are managed by Microsoft. If you want a connectivity back to your on-prem, then you need to have that network connection over here, and you need to configure that network connection. Apart from that, you don't need to create separate VNet, hub and spoke model in vendor assembled DaaS solution. Customers over here has to just manage user VMs. In the previous slide, the main difference is customer will have to configure and manage user VMs. VMs. Over here, customers to just manage user VMs. Customers to just manage user VMs. That is the main difference. In a nutshell, vendors are taking away a lot of responsibilities from customers in vendor assembled scenario. Now let's check the strengths, opportunities, weakness and threats for vendor assembled DaaS solution. Let's look at strengths now. Decrease in operational complexity, that is one of the important consideration. Require fewer skills to manage and maintain the solution from a customer side, that is very important. Tightly aligned with modern device management solutions. Not all the vendors provide that, but I'm specifically talking about Windows 365 over here. It is tightly integrated with Intune, etc. So it has that added advantage. I'm not the only one saying this. Even Gardner's research paper highlighted this. The first and latest DaaS Magic Quadrant report has noted this point as well. Now let's look at opportunities. What I have seen is most of the innovations are happening in vendor assembled offering, at least from a Microsoft side. So that is going to provide better employee experience, and you would be able to use third-party solutions such as Nerdio to decrease the cost of this solution with license optimization, etc. etc. If you are using vendor assembled DaaS solution, this is going to help you to adapt to new innovations and changes pretty easily, because you are not talking about changing anything in infrastructure. It is all managed by the vendor. Again, as mentioned before, this is not applicable for all the vendors available in the market. I am specifically talking about Windows 365 as a service over here in this particular example. There are new opportunities, new innovations are happening, as I mentioned. So probably you can also avoid having very complex management of thin clients. And let's look at weaknesses now. Limited VM templates and specs are available with this kind of a solution. It is bundled with a particular license, so you don't have a lot of options like self-assembled scenario. Not possible to host VDIs on-prem. This is another weakness. And the costing is fixed. It is per user per month costing for most of the vendors. And then Microsoft is coming up with something very innovative in licensing also for frontline workers. We'll see more details in the I button over here about Windows 365 frontline. What are the threats for vendor assembled DaaS solution? DR and BCP options is limited, or it is costly. It is not a fully matured market. Organizations are trying this out, and as I mentioned, most of the organizations workload is still with self-assembled VDI solution or DaaS solution. It is a personal desktop scenario in most of the cases, at least in Windows 365 scenarios. It is personal desktop, so no multi-session, pooled, non-persistent. These things are not available, at least with some of the vendors. But it is all about changing the perspective of VDI solution and VDI experience by giving the users a personal desktop. Vendor managed DaaS solution. So this is the third offering, and over here everything is managed by vendor. As I mentioned over here, full service is managed by vendor. End-to-end service is managed by vendor along with user support. For some of the organizations, application management and user support are handled by customers itself, but not fully. Some part of application management, some part of user support is handled by customers. Most of the components, most of the things are managed by vendor itself. This is entirely offloading to vendor. That is vendor managed DaaS solution. Then what customer needs to do? Customers to manage operating system of user VMs and user support. So mainly what we have seen is, in this scenario, it is customers' responsibility to patch VMs, make sure the software updates are installed on the VM, etc. And some parts of user support is also customers' responsibility. Rest everything is managed directly from vendor side. That is why why it is called vendor managed DaaS solution. And over here you can see a example and how they are providing vendor managed solution. There are other vendors also who provides vendor managed solutions. I will add all those details into the description of the video, so do check that out. Now let's check the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats for vendor managed DaaS solution. One of the major strength is setup and maintenance are done by vendor, and this gets regular updates and aligned with evergreen approach. What are the opportunities? Fast deployment time, because vendor is doing everything, so deployment time is going to be very fast. Faster adoption of changes and innovative techs, could be faster adoption if it is coming from vendor side. Overall, vendor managed DaaS solution is going to be a bit tricky at this point of time, because Microsoft is not offering any solution on this segment. So most of the innovations on Windows are coming from Microsoft, so it would be difficult for other vendors who are offering vendor managed DaaS solutions to provide innovations in the same speed. It is going to be tricky scenario. Vendor might take more time, so need to be careful about this. New opportunities to move away from thin clients, but most of the vendors in this field is using traditional technologies to facilitate vendor managed DaaS solution. So strength and opportunities mentioned in this slide is going to be a bit tricky because of the innovations and technology adoptions by vendors. What I have seen is at the moment most of these vendors are using not fully cloud native architecture for vendor managed DaaS solution. That is why I'm highlighting this concern. Now let's look into the weaknesses. Lesser monitoring, troubleshooting options available, because everything is managed by vendor. You might not have access to go into deep level troubleshooting, etc. Limited or fixed cost options, because normally it is going to be a package per user per month kind of a license model. What are the threats? Lesser network insights for this solution, and obviously DR and BCP solutions are going to be more costly or costlier. Lesser control on platform changes, because those things are entirely managed by the vendor. And some of these points are not applicable for all the vendors, but I try to generalize it wherever possible. Now let's look at Gardner's view of the DaaS market. By 2026, 80% of DaaS sales will be vendor assembled. That is the second scenario where Windows 365 workport comes into picture. Or by 2026, 80% of DaaS sales will be vendor assembled or vendor managed solution. As per Gartner, most of the organizations are going to move away from self-assembled solutions like AVD and Citrix Cloud solution. At the moment, the vendor assembled, vendor managed solutions are less in use, only 20% in the year of 2023. That is going to jump to 80% in 2026, and probably most of the vendors are going to concentrate on either vendor assembled or vendor managed solutions. And over here Microsoft has a lot of advantage because they already have a matured solution in vendor assembled DaaS category called Windows 365. Now that you have seen all the details about three types of DaaS offering, and you have seen advantages, disadvantages of these offering, and you have also gone through SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunity, threats kind of matrix for all these offerings. Hope this was useful. Thank you all for watching. See you around.